Ahoy! And welcome to the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. The Boating Hour brings you the latest and greatest essential information about everything that sails, floats, or motors upon the high seas of Southern California. From landlubbers to old salts, there'll be something for everyone. So climb aboard and get ready to sail with Captain Rick.
Ahoy out there, and welcome to the Boating Hour. I'm Captain Rick, and I want to thank you for joining us here on AM 870. We're here every Saturday at 4 p.m., and please be sure to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com, and now on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, The Boating Hour with Captain Rick. Thanks to our sponsor for our show today, Livia One Probiotics, natural, organic, and allergen-free. And if you go to theboatinghour.com, you can click on Livia One, go right to their website for all their wonderful products, Livia One Probiotics, and Raycom radios, reliable two-way radios, commercial radios throughout Southern California. And stay tuned for some upcoming clinics and luncheons where we're going to have some book signings. We'll be at all kinds of places, from community locations and yacht clubs, and we're going to have Raycom Radio give an introduction to all kinds of radio, from VHF radios, ham radio, an introduction to getting your licenses. So scouts, come on down and we'll get you your ham license certification. It's a lot of fun. And if you're in business and you need two-way, reliable communications, private communications throughout Southern California, Raycom radios. Well, we've had a wonderful year. We're coming to the end. I just can't believe it. I'm buying Christmas presents already. We're getting ready for the holidays. Thanksgiving's coming up. I can't believe how fast this year went. Some exciting regattas. Yacht clubs are on the rise. We've had a lot of people from different clubs and race committees come and talk about how successful the racing has been going. The yacht clubs have filled up with membership. A lot of juniors program. One of my favorite juniors program of all. There's couple great ones. But I'm very involved at the Santa Monica Windjammers Yacht Club. They have the Super Bowl regatta the week before the Super Bowl. So I'll be down there and I'll be participating in that. And last week, we had Tamis from the Santa Monica Windjammers Yacht Club. She's a staff Commodore and also involved with the ASMBYC, the Association of Santa Monica Bay Yacht Clubs, and SCYA, the Southern California Yachting Association. And those are the groups that clubs are members of. So they coordinate all their functions, their activities, their parties, and most importantly, their regattas. Because when you do a regatta, you feature your yacht club, but you want members from all kinds of yacht clubs coming and enjoying your club and getting out there on the water. So that's one of the primary purposes of these organizations, but also to guide and help these yacht clubs when they're flourishing and when they're on the bottom of the roller coaster, when things are having trouble. Every yacht club goes through all kinds of problems, but mostly when there's a lot of activity, you got to coordinate that activity. So they're instrumental with people that have been Commodores, people that are very active. So that's the purpose of those associations in part, and to promote sailing, of course, and boating. Going to be very important with the Olympics coming up in 28. So we're going to have a lot of activities, and we're expecting American teams, a lot of youngsters, a lot of new classes. We're expecting a lot of our youngsters to medal. They're doing a great job nationally and internationally. So we'll talk all about that. But there's going to be a lot of activities, and they're going to be looking for a lot of volunteers. So if you're looking to volunteer, you want to find out more, of course, email me, and we've got some upcoming shows where we're going to talk about that. So I really enjoyed my guest. We did 2 shows. I did that twice in a row with Tamis because we barely touched the subject on the first show, so the last 2 weeks, and we talked about the RBOC, the Recreational Boaters of California. You know, boating is an exciting thing. It's not just for the super uber wealthy. Of course, you're going to see these ships, these 100-plus foot ships with helicopters, and boy, those are for the uber wealthy. But generally speaking, boating, fishermen and sailors and people that trail their boats, it's for the average person. You can go to any yacht club, walk on in, and if you're a novice, intermediate, or advanced, and there's something for you to do, if you're a sailor or a fisherman, fishermen tend not to be part of yacht clubs, but we do have a few, and we welcome them. And of course, I really like doing the fish report. We've done a couple fish reports, and coming on next week, our favorite fisherman, Dave Estes. So Dave, Captain Dave with the Mahalo Robalo, he's going to come on, and we're going to talk all about what to expect as the season changes as we go into the holidays. So Thanksgiving and New Year's is my favorite time of year. Everybody has their parties, and there's all kinds of functions and festivities. So I really enjoy this. And if you find you got an empty evening, or you're a weekend and got nothing to do, walk on down to your marina. If you got to take a bus, ride your bike, take your car, get to one of the yacht clubs. Every marina has all kinds of functions. They're fun to go to. And speaking about marinas down in Long Beach, coming up is the Bart Hall Show. I'm really looking forward to that. We'll be there. We'll have the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We're going to talk all about the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We featured them on many, many shows. If you're an avid listener, you know we've had some really accomplished people come on, and we featured them when they were the featured branch in the Armed Forces Parade. So it switches off. Next year, I believe, is the Army. So next year coming up in May, the featured branch will be either the Army or the Navy. So we're going to talk a lot more about all the activities. But speaking about activities, my guest today, Bob Gray, a champion of going out to all the activities, and a racer, a sailor. So Bob, thanks for joining Captain Rick again on the Boating Hour. I haven't had you on the show for a while. How have you been doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on board. I'm still in Ohio. The leaves have fallen. It's starting to get crisp and cool, and I miss California.
Well, you know, Bob, it's gotten really just blistering cold. I was on my boat last night, and it dropped to about 64 degrees. I had to close my hatch at night.
Oh, I don't know how people will survive. It was 38 here, so congratulations.
We did have a wind where we saw this last couple days. We finally got a little bit of wind and weather, and things are cooling off. So, all right, you know what? I really want to talk about you sailing in Ohio, the difference between being on the Pacific Ocean, and you're a champion sailor. You've been out on the Pacific Ocean. I know you're also a lake sailor. What's the difference? Because when you raced, you won everything. I couldn't believe how successful you were in all the different kinds of races. What's the difference in you racing between the boats and the type of regattas between being on the Pacific Ocean and being way over there on the other side of the country?
Well, the difference, California, you got some of the best sailors in the world out there, and you can do it all year round. In Ohio, you've got a truncated season. You're really only going 5 or 6 months. But the real main difference between the two is the sea conditions. I'm right here on Lake Erie, which is, it looks like the ocean. You can't see the other side of the lake. But it's a shallow lake, so because of that, it gets quite choppy, and you can get some huge waves out here too that are all wind driven. It's not a tide. If you get a 7-foot tide, a nice swell in California, it's almost smooth. It's a pleasure to go over. But here you'll get a 10-foot wave every 6 seconds. So at times it can be more like sailing in a washing machine than California, and the wind's more shifty out here in Ohio. I mean, you really have to pay close attention to that wind indicator because in L.A., Marina Del Rey, when I sailed, that wind was pretty steady. You could pretty much count it. It might vary a little bit, but not much. Here, the wind can clock on a dime. And you could have a downwind leg, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're going into it. So it's different that way, Rick.
Wow, okay. So you don't have the oscillating type of wind shifts that I experienced for the first time when I was in the San Francisco Bay, or when I've been on lakes before. And that is different from the Pacific Ocean. Of course, it's I guess the wrong time of year. It gets pretty cold and windy. That's interesting. Well, what have you been up to? Have you been in some regattas out there? And what boat are you sailing now?
Well, when I was in California, I had a Morgan 27, which is a fantastic boat. I loved that boat, and it was very successful. And I went for a few years without having a boat here in Ohio. I had a dock, and the docks are a little different. It's not just a slip. the marina I'm in, everyone has their own yard. You side tie to a deck. You've got a couple sheds, refrigerators, beer, booze, fire pits, gazebo. I mean, and it's pretty affordable. I mean, it's really a marina like you've never seen. And I got the marina slip thinking I would get a boat. I ended up getting a tiny little boat, a Ranger 22, because there was about 4 or 5 of them out here, and they were bugging me to join their fleet. And the Ranger 22, it's almost like a toy. But I'm having more fun with that Ranger 22, and it's got the spirit of my Morgan in it. We're just whomping a lot of people, and we're having a blast to it. So we put the boat in the water July 2nd. I got it from a guy in North Carolina who sailed on Lake Norman, and we've just had a blast with it all summer long.
That's interesting, and I know that the even series of the Ranger are different than the odd. You know, I had the Ranger 26, remember, from our club, from a couple of Rangers, the Gary Mall Rangers, who was a naval architect that built Ted Turner's America's Cup boat, and the Ranger 23 that I have that I'm restoring was used in the movie The Dove. So it was, The Dove, they got, I guess, Academy Award for the best music, and it was a whole story about traveling around the world, although I heard they used 2 different boats in that movie. But that Ranger 23 and your Ranger 22, I guess they're different boats. You know, so it's a whole different boat. So
the Ranger 22 was built by the same guys that made the Cal 25.
Oh, a Lapworth boat, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so a whole different kind of boat. Are you racing that one? Have you had any exciting race regattas to tell us about?
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, there's a fleet of them, but there's also a race they have out here called the Falcon Cup, and it's a huge race. It's a 26-mile race from Cleveland Yacht Club to Menor Harbor Yacht Club, 2 very fine yacht clubs. And typically, when you do that race, it's pretty slow. It's usually a downwind leg. It's in August, so the wind's a little lighter. Well, I took that boat down Thursday to prep for a Saturday race, and it was fine weather. And on Saturday morning, when the race was gearing up to start, it was lumpy, Rick. It was lumpy, but it was a manageable lumpy. And so the race started, and about 10 minutes after the race started, it got foul. And so, like I said, I'm a 22-footer. Everyone in my fleet is 39 to 45 feet in length. And luckily, the wind and the waves were going exactly into the direction of the finish. So I'm going wing on wing for 26 miles. Now, this boat only has a hull speed of about 7 knots. But I was getting 10-foot waves behind me every 6 to 7 seconds. I was clipping 15 knots the whole way home.
My God, you didn't sink like a submarine?
Oh, well, we did. People said they lost track of us a couple of times because once you got in the trough in between waves, you would just see like the top end of your mast. And Rick, usually I'm pretty tricky at the start, and I pull some shenanigans on the starting line. This race, I didn't do any of this. I just steered it straight. I wasn't trying to win a race. I was just trying to survive. This was the roughest weather I've seen in 43 years.
Oh, my goodness.
And lo and behold, we ended up winning in that 22-foot boat.
That's exciting. I did that once in a Cal 20 with Liza, of course, your ex, and we went above hull speed. I remember rounding. I was in the cruiser class. We had a little barbecue on that railing on that 20-foot Cal, the Cal, and just to show everybody that, I didn't empty the boat out. And I remember rounding the mark behind Zephyr Paul, who's now owned, but it's back in the club, the South Coast Corinthian. So it's back in the club, and I think Paul is now skippering that boat, or he's on the crew again. But I remember he was rounding, and he was in a Ranger 33, completely decked out, experienced sailors, and he rounded. And when he rounded the mark, and I was right behind, he started laughing and said, "What are you doing up here? I've never seen you round the windward mark, this early." So I did great, and I came in, and because of the PHRF ratings, I came in first. And guess what? There was a problem with one of the buoys. I think the leeward mark, and they scrapped the race. I forgot what it was blowing, about 15 or so. It's kind of, I'm going to tell you, dinghy racing and kids been sailing is coming back. There was a lull. There was a dead period for a while. A lot of kids were not coming. A lot of families were not getting boats and joining yacht clubs. And we had a lull where it went down a little bit. And then all of a sudden, of course, we had the lockdowns. And the only thing people could do is go fishing, sailing, or go in campers. And I tell you, that period, I was kind of surprised. Most of the yacht clubs increased their membership. So there's a lot more participation again. So it's exciting because the 28 Olympics are coming here. And you're a cameraman. Any chance I'm going to see you here behind the camera at any of the Olympics?
Actually, it's possible. I sent my information into NBC on that already.
Oh, that's it. Oh, NBC covering the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. The clubs are starting to talk about it. The ones that won't be personally involved, they're going to try to do activities to bring people around. So that's going to be exciting. I had on my show last week, I had Temis from, do you know her from the Santa Monica Windjammers Yacht Club?
Which one is that?
Temis. And
yes, of course.
She's the tall blonde, and she's fantastic sailor. Themis. And I love her to death. And I found out, she was during the golden years, she was a professional tennis player. And I
can see that.
Yeah, she was a professional tennis player. She was also a track star, and from Brazil, of all places. And we talked about the club. I tried to promote the club and sailing a little bit, of course, like I always do. But she is now involved with the RBOC, the Recreational Boaters of California. And there's a lot going on here in California where they're trying to raise the fees. They're trying to take what they do raise and put it in the general fund, which is, the problem of any agency or organization, because then they don't have to put that money back into the program, which the fees came from. So she's intimately involved in that. Of course, we had the ban on the copper bottoms, which creates a problem because you get more growth underneath, which that growth becomes, toxic. So it has a reverse effect.
That's what I use here. I use that here in Ohio, the VC17 paint, which has the copper. They don't have the same Coastal Commission guidelines that you have. Most people here use like regular bottom paint, the latex or whatever it's made out of. But if you're a racer, you'll get that VC17 put on every time.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing what goes on here, because it's actually, their intentions are good, but they don't study properly. They don't have people that are sailors that understand the ocean, that understand the marinas, and they don't understand what dissipates. So they have these people that say, okay, well, we got to clean up the environment. We want no copper. And I remember being at when they first passed that rule. It was local in the county of Los Angeles, which was a test ground for the state of California. And I remember standing up and saying, well, how much copper is acceptable? And, they said 0. And I said, copper's in our blood. It's in our water. Without copper, there's no life. And they said, well, we'll agree to disagree. So they absolutely want the elements of life. They want to go down to 0. So I am an environmentalist. You as well. It's often you're going to see sailors out there, fishermen. They see something in the water and they'll deviate course to pick it up. And we're the original conservationists and environmentalists.
Lake Erie, when I grew up as a kid, there used to be more fish on top of the water than in the water. It was a dead lake. Yeah, it was very polluted. In fact, one of our feeding rivers, the Cuyahoga River, actually caught on fire. So how embarrassing is that?
Wait, caught on fire? How did that lake catch on fire?
It was just loaded with chemicals. So the element that you use to put fire out with, water, actually turned into fire. It was a mess. So they really did a huge project to clean up the lake, but what really did it, what made Lake Erie really clean, is back in the mid-'80s, a tanker came through the lake, and some zebra mussels fell off of it, and they were panicked about these zebra mussels. They were going to clog up all the intakes and make a mess. And so what they figured out is they throw a couple divers down to scrape the intakes, but what these zebra mussels have been doing, they've been filtering the lake. So they're sucking in all the impurities and the garbage and the junk, and the water's clean. You could stand there, and be up to your neck in water on a calm day, and you could see your feet. That never happened when I was a kid. In fact, Lake Erie has more fish in it than all the other Great Lakes combined. It's made a complete comeback. It's beautiful.
That is absolutely good news. I'm glad to hear that. We've got a lot of organizations here. People spend time and money and donate to these groups to clean up, the Santa Monica Bay restoration. I should get them on the show, the restoration, the Santa Monica Bay group, because they've done a wonderful job. The surfers are the first ones to know when you have polluted waters. Those surfers want clean water. So it's we've done a good job in the Santa Monica Bay. God, that's amazing.
It's amazing, Rick. Okay, so you take some kids today that are maybe 25 to 35 years old. I'm 58. You're 48.
I'm 28.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
I'm a teenager, Bob.
But they complain of how filthy things are. But the reason they're complaining is they don't have any point of reference.
Okay.
If they were alive in the 70s, when we had commercials with the crying Indian because they're throwing trash everywhere. New York City was a mess. L.A. was smoggy, so smog. Even in '89, I remember when I first moved to L.A. how smoggy it was. It's not that smoggy anymore. You could see Big Bear from Marina Del Rey or the Hollywood sign. And in the '80s and early '90s, you couldn't. And so they don't have a point of reference. They think right now it's just horrible. Oh, well, let me take you in a time machine to 1972. I'll show you horrible.
It's a lot better, and there's a lot more people, and there's a tremendous amount of activity that goes on, and I just hope it keeps getting cleaner because I like the ocean. And, of course, we got a lot of paddle boarders there. And I'll tell you, I don't see people throwing stuff in the water anymore. It is a lot cleaner. We've had some natural disasters, and the Coast Guard has been instrumental in cleaning stuff up. We've had a couple tankers and a couple of lines that have broke, and we've cleaned those. The environmental cleanup has been very successful. So we've got some good year-round ocean, year-round swimming, surfing, sailing, and fishing. And the fish. And I'm going to have next week. I've got Captain Dave Estes. He was this soccer coach, and he goes out on the Mahalo Robalo, and he's going to talk about the fishing. I'll ask him about that, is how much cleaner. But our Santa Monica Bay they used to think it was fished out, and a lot of the tournaments were starting to slow down, and they're back. We've got more fish, and cleaner, healthier fish than ever before. Well, Bob, it's been great having you come back on the show. You got to be a regular. You got to keep in touch. I want to know everything that's going on. I got to visit you there. I've never been in your lake. And I definitely want to make that.
You'll love it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. What do you got planned for the holidays?
I think I'm going to take a couple months off. I really hate the cold weather. I think I'm just going to go down to Florida for a couple months, and I've got a son down there and some aunts, so I'm going to go hang out with them just to get away. Ohio winters can be quite bitterly cold, and the boat's out of the water. It's wrapped up. It's sitting on its cradle. And I'll just start plotting next year's. Okay. Rick, we're stomping them. And, we got a fleet of about 6 Ranger 22s here, so we just barely qualify as a fleet. But down in Brazil, they have over 60 Ranger 22s that race every week, and they actually televise those races. It's a big deal. They have a massive fleet down in Brazil. All
right, we got to talk more about that. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Next week, I've got the fish report and a weather report we're going to talk all about with Captain Dave. Dave Estes is coming on the show, so we're going to have that next week. Bob, thanks for coming and being on the show with me.
No problem, buddy. Anytime.
Well, that's all the time we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed our show. As always, we're so very fortunate to have such wonderful and exciting guests. And I want to thank Bob from Ohio, used to be in Marina Del Rey and one of the champion racer and sailors out of the Pacific Ocean in Southern California. Let's not forget the Coasties, protecting our waters, America's lifesavers, and guardians of the sea. Remember, if you do it right and follow the guidelines and safety precautions, there's no place like being out in the water in the fresh air and sunshine in beautiful, sunny Southern California. I hope everybody had a wonderful Halloween, and coming up is Thanksgiving, and we've got the holidays, Christmas holidays, and the New Year's coming up. Thanks to our sponsors for our show today, Livia One Probiotics and Raycom Radios, reliable two-way radios throughout Southern California. So happy Thanksgiving! And we have Dave Estes with the Fish Report coming up next week. This is Captain Rick saying ahoy, fair winds, dog.